Hi, everybody. Roy Gregory here. Today, we're going to generate a little bit of, maybe some agreements, some disagreements. We're going to talk about the greatest rock albums of all time. I had a chance to work album rock in the first 10, 15 years of my career. So these were albums that you would drop on the turntable. You would play from start to finish. A different time, of course, now we deal with song downloads, so a little different. But each one of these albums, to me, marked a specific time in rock and roll. They were one-of-a-kind albums, and they shaped rock history as we know it today. I started in the 1970s. I went to the early 1990s. Here is my top 10 list. At number 10, the start of the grunge era. Released in September of 1991, it was Nevermind from Nirvana. Of course, Kurt Cobain, Dave Grohl, the start of the grunge rock era. What a great album, and a band that was cut short by the tragic death of Kurt Cobain. But this particular album, number 10 on my list, definitely marked a period in rock history, the grunge rock era, and it makes number 10 on my list, Nevermind from Nirvana. Number 9 on my list of greatest rock albums of all time is the 1983 release of Texas Flood, the debut release from Stevie Ray Vaughan. Boy, Stevie Ray was my favorite personally, and this album showed so many different signs of Stevie Ray Vaughan. You know, the title track, Texas Flood, just a blues classic. He had a couple singles released on here, Love Struck Baby and Pride and Joy. Testify, I believe, was Grammy nominated, might even won a Grammy. But number 9 on my list is the 1983 release from Stevie Ray Vaughan, Texas Flood. Number 8 on the list is the 1976 release, Hotel California from the Eagles. One of my favorite albums. This is when Joe Walsh joined an already very successful band. But when you added, Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Don Felder, and then you added Joe Walsh to the lineup, these guys were incredible. And, of course, the title track, one of the greatest songs of all time. That's a song that I played a million times. I've listened to it a million times, and I could still hear it a million times. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Life in the Fast Lane, New Kid in Town, Victim of Love, one of my all-time favorite Eagles songs. Thus, at number 8 on the list, the 1976 release, although most of us remember it in 1977, Hotel California from the Eagles. Number 7 on my list is Led Zeppelin 4 from Led Zeppelin. There were a lot of different albums I could have selected here. Led Zeppelin 4 was released in November of 1971. Of course, it had Stairway to Heaven. It had Rock and Roll, Black Dog, Misty Mountain Hop, When the Levee Breaks. To me, this is an album that defines the heavy metal portion of rock and roll. 1971's Led Zeppelin 4, which is number 7 on my list of greatest albums of all time. Number 6 on my list might get a little controversy from some people, but it's Machine Head from Deep Purple, released in March of 1972. It had the song Smoke on the Water, but I remember playing this album from start to finish. Every single song was a killer. Highway Star, Pictures of Home, Maybe I'm a Leo, Never Before Lazy, and also Space Truckin', which I remember my neighbors, they were cheerleaders, and they used to do a cheerleading bit to this particular song, Space Truckin'. It's number 6 on my list of the greatest albums of all time. Number 5 on my list is sort of I call it a tie, because to me, there were 2 albums that were just my all-time favorites from the band Rush. One of them was the 1980 release of Permanent Waves that contains Spirit of the Radio, Free Will, Entre Nous, Jacob's Ladder, and then Moving Pictures, which came out right after that. Those, to me, kind of a tie at number 5, marked a big change for the career of Rush, which to this day, one of my all-time favorite bands, Neil Peart, the drummer, in my opinion, the greatest drummer of all time and the greatest songwriter of all time. Sometime take a look at the lyrics for a song just like Entre Nous. Read the lyrics. I mean, there's so many different great songs, but to me, number 5, kind of a tie between the 1980 release Permanent Waves and the follow-up Moving Pictures from Rush. We're up to number 4 on the list of the greatest albums of all time in rock history, and number 4 on my list, Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd. One of 2 awesome albums released in 1973. This one was released in March of that year. The recording of this project, the album itself, was absolutely amazing. It's an album that sold over, get this, 45 million copies worldwide, and was on the album charts for years and years and years. I mean, well over 10 years after its release in 1973. And ironically, it's one of 2 albums from 1973 that fall into my personal top 10. Number 4, the classic Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd. We're up to number 3 on this list, and this is where I think I'm going to maybe, I won't say take grief for it, but to me, one of the greatest albums ever released was the 1973 release of Montrose, Ronnie Montrose, and the debut of singer Sammy Hagar. Man, this album, start to finish, every single song I remember playing on rock radio during that time. I mean, you had, Bad Motor Scooter, you had Rock Candy, Rock the Nation, Space Station number 5, Good Rockin' Tonight, Make It Last. What a great album, produced by Ted Templeman, who also has produced another album that I have in the top 3 of my list. At number 3, the 1973 release, Montrose. At number 2 on my list is really an incredible album when you think about it. It is the 1980 release Back in Black from AC/DC. It was only months before this album was released that their longtime singer Bon Scott had died, and you thought that that was going to be the end. Well, they picked up the pieces, and rather quickly, I might add. This album, by the way, was produced by Mutt Lange, who was married to Shania Twain at one time. And again, another album, start to finish, every single song I remember playing on album rock radio. It's really amazing that this band not only kept things together, but actually got really bigger and better than ever with their best-selling album of all time, 1980's Back in Black, my number 2 greatest rock album of all time. Well, number 1 on my list is, to me, still to this day, the greatest album of all time, the 1978 release of Van Halen's debut, Van Halen. Of course, who could forget the incredible two-handed rock and roll solo from Eruption, and then you had songs like You Really Got Me, Running with the Devil, Jamie's Crying, Ain't Talking About Love, but there were so many great songs on this album. This is yet another album that I remember actually playing every single song on album rock radio at some point. To me, one of the greatest rock albums of all time. I can't see how anyone's going to top this one. My personal favorite at number 1, the debut release from Van Halen. All right, I know you've got your favorites and you're going to tear apart some of mine. That's okay. Go ahead and comment on your list of greatest rock albums of all time.